Welcome everybody. We are back in the Leadership Lounge where we just embark on a journey for better leadership. There is no destination, there is no arrival. It is just a journey to better leadership, to better serve the people who we were charged to lead so that we can reach that shared vision. We've been on this control to connection series journey, and today we're talking about control of people. And to do that, we have a very special guest. And I know I usually say very special guest, but let me tell you how special. This is my soror,
Hey.
Latanya Simmons, and she is the program director at the Philadelphia Academy for School Leaders. So I'm so excited.
So excited to be here and to have this conversation today and just connect with Dr. Davis. So very, very honored to be in the space.
So honored to have you here. Over the course of our episodes, we've been unpacking different dominant culture norms. And today, the three that we're going to focus on for control of people is paternalism, power hoarding, and fear of open conflict. So without further ado, how would you define paternalism?
Paternalism is really limiting a person or a group's freedom or autonomy or their agency for their own supposed good. It would be much like a parent would restrict a child's choices, in the sense to protect them. A child wanting to eat fried chicken and pizza every single night. Well, as a parent, I'm not going to let you do that because I want to ensure that you're healthy. But at the same time, that it would be restricting their freedom or their choice. And so in the sense of a leader, oftentimes make those decisions thinking that we're doing right by them, but at the same time, we're stripping away their freedom or their voice or their agency, and also an opportunity for them to learn or gain exposure around their own practice. And so, oftentimes it's done with the sense I'm doing something good, but in reality, there is a negative impact associated.
So there's two things that happen here that I really appreciate that I want to lift. So one, you made it super practical because everybody's like, yeah, you would restrict, right? Out of love, you're restricting your child, the example that you gave, from making these unhealthy choices, right? You setting them up for success in your mind. I'm a leader. Why would I not want to do that for folks? Like, save or, for better or lack of terms, folks from going down the wrong path. Why would I not want to do that? Isn't that helping my organization?
In a sense, but I would say you are also not seeing the full scope of the power in making mistakes. I tell my team all the time that if you fail, just fail forward. There's a lot of truth and knowledge and experience that I can't teach you through or protect you from. Sometimes you just have to go through it yourself, and those be the lessons that are actually more impactful in someone's own growth. And so on my team, and I think as a leader, I've gotten out of those senses. I used to be very blind to white dominant culture, perfectionism, and the need to be perfect and the need to show up a certain way, especially as a Black woman in leadership, was something that stayed in the back of my mind and in the forefront of my mind all the time. And I didn't feel I had the space to make those mistakes because, there was so much riding on the fact that I'm in this position and I have to say all the things and do all the right things because I'm going to not get the same grace that, say, my other counterparts would. However, when you create these cultures of psychological safety and trust, and you really believe in the growth of your team and really building your team out, you have to also teach them that their mistakes have valuable lessons. When we, allow our team members to go and do the thing, even when it may not be the best thing, there's an opportunity for them to learn. And then it's also important for you as a leader then to debrief what that issue was and how they could have done something differently. What lessons did they learn by going through that experience? You're like their coach. So you want to talk through the mistake. You want to talk through the failure. You want to help them understand what they should do next time, because it's just a learning opportunity. It's another data point. I'm not the author and the finisher of someone's growth. I'm still learning. I'm still growing, even as a leader. I'm not perfect. And so I welcome mistakes, and we welcome mistakes. And it's just something that on my team that my folks aren't afraid to make mistakes because there'll always be a lesson from them. So yeah, I get it. You want to protect your people. You want them not to make mistakes. You want everything to feel good, but that's not reality. And it's not reality. That's not real.
When you say coach them through it, I like that, right? Because it's not like don't make any decisions for your folks and let them fail. That's how they'll learn, right? You said no, we're a partner in this. So that's where that connection. That's where you get to go from control to connection. And there's a beautiful thing that gets to happen when you allow people to start having some agency over their voice. They build confidence, and then they start doing things that you couldn't even imagine. What would you say to somebody in a space that's like, all of that sounds good, but we got to get here and we got to get here right now. I don't got time to be letting you fail. Too much is at risk, too
Right.
much is at stake. What would you say to help somebody, a leader in that position, still move towards connection and move a little bit away from control?
I think that's important, right? And I also want to validate that, especially as a leader, everything feels super important. Everything feels high priority. But that isn't the case in most circumstances, right? And say if it is, right, for one particular, say, project or particular goal or what have you, there are other opportunities, I'm sure, within the scope of your team that you can allow there to be some flexibility. And I would say, like, what is your low hanging fruit versus, you're really, there's some things that, yeah, we're gonna we got to bring excellence. We can't touch this. This is not the opportunity for you to practice and make the mistake and grow. I get that, but it's your job then as the leader to differentiate that for your team and identify what are those high priority items that may not have the level of agency or autonomy or freedom, and that your expertise needs to be kind of the guide and the final decision making as far as that particular initiative or goal. And then what are some other items or opportunities or initiatives within your scope that your team can have more autonomy, more freedom, more choice, make mistakes, and the mistakes will not create a really huge negative impact across the portfolio or the scope of your work, right? Then you can then be really smart, strong, intentional, and strategic. I would just tell that leader to be really clear on what that is. And then the why, why would they identify one being high priority versus more lower priority, and be able to then explain that, because you don't also want to just come off like this dictator to your team. There should be a real clear understanding behind why you've differentiated these different initiatives and why there's more autonomy here versus not. And if you provide that why, oftentimes your team is going to rock with you and be bought into your decision making.
That is so good, because you basically said, like, plan to allow the team to have agency over decision making. You say as you're structuring what your priorities are and how you're going to get there, embed spaces for your leaders to practice that. So therefore, if they have to make that high stakes decision later, they've already had practice. It's not now you just throwing them to the wolves. You've been able to kind of to be able to build that muscle for them to flex when they need it. That is so good. And then when you can't, right, offer the why. But if they know that they're going to have opportunities to practice, that automatically gets to share some of the weight. Love that. And I really love the way, because our last episode when we were doing control of truth, we talked about either or thinking. So I love the way you didn't negate any of the experiences. You said, yes, there are some times where I'm going to have to make the decision for the team that I lead. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to embed practice for them. So you invited some both and thinking in there and didn't have to negate either experience. That was masterful. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Grace.
Let's get into power hoarding, right? Because that's a good transition right into power hoarding.
Yes.
And tell me, what is power hoarding? And have you ever been in a space as a leader where you've hoarded the power, or you've coached somebody where you've hoarded?
Yes. Power hoarding definitely is honestly, it's kind of like the definition is in it. You are right holding on to all the power and the control rather than sharing it or empowering others on your team. It often shows I always coin it as like this top-down leadership in a way where all the decision making, all the power, all of those things are kind of done in a vacuum with the people at the top. And it creates a sense of, I would say, in your team that like you're not valued or appreciated, or a lack of buy-in to the overall organization, I would say. But yeah, it's really just about keeping control in decisions and making that more concentrated at the top versus distributing that equally across a team or an organization.
And I typically say this often: control is expensive.
Mm-hmm.
I say control is expensive because it costs trust, it
Yep.
costs sustainability, it costs creativity. There's so many costs to control, but it feels so right in the moment. For some of us, it feels so right in the moment because it feels like we're doing the right thing.
Right.
Most leaders don't wake up saying, "Hey, I'm going to make somebody's life miserable today," or "I'm going to make a psychologically unsafe environment." They're not saying that, right? So they're thinking that they're doing what's best for the organization. So
Mm-hmm.
when you think about power hoarding and you think somebody with well intentions that don't feel like, I don't do that, you share some subtle ways that it might show up for folks, even well intended.
Yeah, even well intended, and I would say that it probably shows up, and I think I want to kind of build upon what you were initially saying, that people don't come into this space wanting to make your people feel terrible. You don't come into this space wanting to have your people feel disconnected to you, your leadership, the overall mission of the organization. And so I think it's oftentimes just rooted in, oftentimes like rooted honestly in believing that some people may not be capable or ready for a level of leadership. You know, if I'm assuming the best, I might say, you're actually not ready for this. So I'm going to, control it because you're not in the space that you are just there yet in your own leadership. And sometimes, to be quite honestly, it could be tied to trust issues. I don't trust, you've shown me that you haven't been able to, or I believe that this person has not been able to accomplish a certain thing. And it could just be, as a person, you can't lead beyond your character. You just might be a controlling
That's
person.
good.
Like, so we're gonna be honest. Might have some control issues in different organizations that I've worked on. Is that decisions are already made, and as a team member, it was kind of like, oh wait, this is being made for us. It's gonna impact us. How did we get here? What were the decisions in the process that got us to this agreement? Who's at the table? Why wasn't I involved in this conversation? Because this decision ultimately impacts my ability to work. And so that oftentimes shows up with decisions that are made. And I will always say this too: as a leader, you are always tasked to be that person to make the final decisions. I don't think you're a strong leader if you are always just kind of like, "Oh, I'm just open, laissez-faire. Everybody kind of just tells me what they want." No, your job is to, hone in all of that information and be the person to make the final decision. So I don't want anyone to feel that they should be afraid to actually lead, to actually be the person that is responsible and have to be held accountable to make those really final important decisions. However, sometimes you as a leader can get lost in the really necessary process that you should go through to engage all of your stakeholders and be really transparent in how you're making those processes and how you're going through those processes toward your final decisions. Power hoarding can just be one in which you really believe or are acting out in a way that it's just top-down leadership. My title is the one that gives me the experience and the decision to make these things, but it doesn't matter if they're the janitor in the building. If they're part of the organization, they've got a valid experience that could truly be really important and impactful in making the right decision for the whole.
Sometimes you hear people use their title, right? When you brought that up, that use their title as the reason why that thing is going to happen, right? I'm the blank. Therefore, this is how it's going to go. Oftentimes I say if you have to utilize your title that might be an indicator that there was something missed along the way, right? If your title has to be the hammer, if your title has to be the motivator,
That's right.
then there was something missed along
That's
the way.
right. That- And everybody knows your title, right?
Everybody knows.
Everybody knows it. But if you have to reinforce it and say it, you've already lost your power, right?
That's good.
You've
Yeah.
already lost your power. You know I'm the boss, but if I have to reinforce it, if I have to tell you I'm the boss, then in that dynamic it shows insecurity.
Ooh.
And yeah, we're gonna go there.
Yeah, you did. You went there.
It shows insecurity, and you're actually diminishing your influence, right? And so it's something that you shouldn't have to exert yourself. You shouldn't have to state that. It happens in your leader actions, your values, your mindset, the way that you treat people. That's all part of it should be all embedded in there to reinforce. Everybody knows, but if you have to say it, it just shows that you are not fully secure in your role. Thus, you are giving away your influence to
Girl, when you said diminishing your influence, that's something right there. So let's
Jen.
move into fear. Let's close this section with fear of open conflict,
Mm-hmm.
right? And how that is also a control of people. Sometimes people think avoiding it, right? I'm helping. So how would you define that, and why is that such an issue?
Yeah, open conflict. So it's truly just a situation where, as a leader, you do not want disagreement, tension, or opposition to be visible and direct in a public space amongst your team. And it's something that, I think, assuming the best and in the right intentions, you want things to feel very positive, and you don't want there to it be negative or people to be upset with one another. But that's not, again, reality. And in open conflict, you actually begin to pull up what may be some of the root issues that you need to deal with on your team to get towards a more healthy, functional team. If you've ever read the five dysfunctions of a team, I want to say,
Yes, 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 yes.
yeah, the fear of open conflict is right in that pyramid, because you're not able to really be able to talk through what are the things that are not working. And so if we're continuously like pushing it down and not doing it, actually hinders and hurts team dynamics, hinders and hurts outcomes, hinders and hurts overall work environment, and leads to an actually toxic environment. Stepford wives, right? Like we are not that. We are real human beings with real personalities, real ideas, real talents, real skills and gifts that bring everybody into a common workplace to contribute and drive towards an outcome. And not all the time we're always going to agree with one another, right? There are real differences in the perspectives in identity, how we approach a problem or a challenge. What do the rules of engagement look like? It's your responsibility to articulate that and to name that and to embrace it and be the support to, identify what came about in those conversations, in that open conflict, and how you're able to learn from that and move forward as an organization to what you're trying to do. So, I know a lot of leaders feel uncomfortable, have to create, it goes back to the sense of like perfectionism.
It is.
But people can see through that, right? And it just leads to inauthenticity in your own leadership. And it leads to a space where people just don't feel safe to then disagree. And so it breeds itself into, I can never state my opinion, right? Or I can never challenge, right, something that I believe isn't working. And it goes back, I think there's like definite like connections through all of them, like paternalism and power hoarding and open conflict, where it then creates these things in folks where you're limiting their voices, or you're squashing their voices out, and they don't feel connected to the work. They don't feel connected to your leadership or the organization. And you're going to be then dealing with turnover. You're going to be dealing with a talent problem. And so these are opportunities to work, to be honest, to be open, and embrace, that conflict is actually a healthy part of being a team versus something that we have to limit or get rid of altogether. Folks come to you with different strengths and different opportunities for their own growth. And so as a leader, you have to identify what is going to best work for them, and then also identify too what are the conditions in your organization or within your school that you are going to allow them to grow and build their capacity. Because at the end of the day, if you are not, prioritizing growing other people and growing leaders under you, you are going to be working like a dog. You are going to burn out. You want to eventually be able to, have that machine be well oiled and well running, whether you are there or not, because you're not going to be there forever. So, most folks aren't dying in their jobs anymore, right? Most folks, especially in our generation, are staying in their roles anywhere from, I think max 5 years before they're moving on. And so, you want to be able to, I think too, leave behind a legacy. You want to be able to leave a strong foundation from your leadership, and that's really built into how do you build the leadership and capacity of others to continue to do the good work that you did, and they continue to build upon it. And these items that we talked about today are all the things that negatively keep your people from growing and negatively keep them from being able to thrive, to not being able to step into their own leadership or be comfortable or bold in the decisions that they make. You need that to happen, or you're going to burn yourself out thinking you can do everything that you can. So
And
this
that's
is
why I often say, even if these mechanisms of control get you to what you want quickly in the interim,
mm-hmm.
it's typically not sustainable, right? And then you end up, again, like you said, doing double work on the back end, trying to make up once people leave or once the scores tank,
Yep.
right? Or whatever the case may be, you end up going to do work on the back end. So as we move from control to connection with these three, just quick reframes, right? Because sometimes
Mm-hmm.
people think, I often say, one of my taglines is small shifts, big leadership.
Mm.
Because not everything has to be a whole year worth of learning to reframe. We can reframe our thinking, reframe our speech, and that will start to make those small shifts will start to show up real big in our leadership. About these three, we're going to go through each one to close out. How can I switch from control to connection and paternalism?
Small shift is to identify the projects or the initiatives that you are going to task members of your team with. What are those projects that need to happen, that if they don't happen well, are not going to tank the overall organization or overall huge goals or big outcomes? But how are you, again, creating this sense of freedom and autonomy and agency? And so doing that is entrusting your team and then being really clear on those big rocks or those big goals or those big initiatives that are going to be really from your decision making and something that you have to really own and control. But being really transparent about what that looks like really creates an opportunity for them to feel that, one, they have voice within your team, and two, they're able to own something that helps to the overall organization, and three, it's something that you, one, care about their development, you care about them being able to do this work, and something that you're checking in on them ongoing. And as long as they know, this is what I own, this is something that she's entrusting me with or he is entrusting me with, versus these are the things that I can't have agency with, they'll respect it. And it's going to take you out of the space of I'm powerless, I'm not able to really do much of anything, into really them feeling engaged and owning and having some ownership and responsibility over over the work with your articulated support.
So again, embedding, creating intentional spaces for them to be able to have
Yes,
decision making. But the goal there that you mentioned was coaching them through that process, not steering them through the
yes,
process, because then that's still your decisions being made, but
yes,
coaching them through their thought pattern, their decision making process, and the consequences that came from positive or negatively impacting the consequences that came from that decision. What would
yes.
you say about power hoarding?
I would say with power hoarding, something really easy and really like smart to do in your leadership is creating feedback loops, asking for perspectives before decisions are being made. So this could be something very simple, even in a meeting or a staff meeting, naming folks before I finalize this plan, giving it to them in advance, having them speak and give opportunities to talk about it. Um, co-creating the things together versus you coming up with the final product. And so oftentimes just like what are some of those opportunities, that they can come with the ideas versus you are coming up with the ideas.
Yeah, so similar to I'm hearing a through line here is being intentional in your planning as a leader.
Hmm.
You can plan for these opportunities.
That's
So
right.
I see that through line. That's great. So let's close out with fear of open conflict.
Yes. I would say with fear with open conflict is to actually name it, right? Like name, and I said this earlier, that conflict is part and having, working through differences, having that is something that's just the normal part of any team or team dynamics. And then being very clear on what are the rules in open conflict, like what are the norms, what are those commitments that everybody are all working toward when we have any type of working dynamics, any type of conversation. Those values should already be identified and you can co-create them together, right? Like what feels right for your team and how we engage, right? Just the rules of engagement. And so when open conflict does come up, you know for sure that there are already a list of set norms, set values, set mindsets that everyone knows they have to play the rules of that before they get, once they get into the space of being able to discuss publicly disagreements. And then you can also lift up, just ask the pointed questions. You give if you go over a plan, you go over an initiative, you go over an idea, a process, you saying, hey, does anyone disagree with this? Just be honest. Just
Right.
state the conversations of disagreement so that you're also modeling for others that you embrace disagreement, you embrace different perspectives, you embrace just potential tension around an idea, or you're trying to uplift it, or you're trying to pull the tension out if you feel it, so that you as a leader, you're showing that you're not afraid of it and
Yeah.
you want to take it head on, because on the other side of that is you all being able to work um, with a shared belief in the thing, right? You don't want anyone. I say, like, I don't want anyone going to battle, and we're about to, like, this war is starting, and we're about to get on the battle line, and you're not 100% on being out here. You gotta cover me and I gotta cover you, right?
Right.
Like, so if you're not 100% and being out here, we gotta know that before we blow the horn and raise the flag to march into battle. Like, we gotta straighten this all out. We gotta all feel really good and really prepared and feel like 100% fired up and ready to go about the thing. And I need to know as a leader if you're not, because then we're gonna get killed, we're gonna get
Right.
massacred out here, right? And so that's something
Good.
too
I
you
like
can
that.
just model and just unearth that and let folks know that you invite that before the thing goes to the final print.
And I always say leaders are always modeling something. Whether
Mm-hmm.
you realize it or not, we're always modeling something. So with those three practical ways that you gave us, you've modeled You've collaboration, shared thought, inclusive thought. You've modeled those things. You've modeled the opportunity to take the fear out of conflict.
Hmm.
Right? So not just having fear of open conflict, you took the fear out of conflict. Because again, your through line was planning.
Yes.
You said, I intend that there will be conflict. Because I have diverse thinkers, right? Diverse perspectives, there's going to be conflict.
Yes.
So let me plan for how we're going to deal with conflict. And what you did was you took the fear out of conflict with that. So that was masterful. So I want to thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. Can you tell everybody how to find you, follow you? Because you do some magnificent work there with the leaders, with the organization, Philadelphia Academy for School Leaders. The work is phenomenal. I mean, you're talking about just some courageous leaders willing to. I've seen her work, right? I've seen her leaders firsthand be willing to set their ego aside for the group. And I mean, it's just magnificent to see an entire group of leaders do that. So let them know how they can find you.
Yes. Well, thank you for saying that. And Dr. Davis has been our faculty in leading and supporting the learning of our phenomenal principals that we currently have in our fellowship. But yes, I am the program director at the Philadelphia Academy of School Leaders. You can find us, the organization, at www.pasl.org. And if you want to email me directly, it is Latanya, Latanya, at pasl.org. Feel free to email me. I'm also on LinkedIn under Latanya Simmons, so feel free to also message me there. Just always looking to partner and collaborate with good people who are doing amazing work to driving toward equity-centered leadership and ensuring that we're putting our students in the forefront of driving toward just academic achievement overall. If you want to see the work that we're doing at Philadelphia Academy of School Leaders, we always have open doors and invite our guests to just check out the amazing work that our principals are doing. I'm excited to be here, and thank you, Dr. Davis, for the honor of allowing me to be part of this conversation.
Thank you. Remember, everyone, this is a journey, no destination, no arrival. Right? We're never going to just get it right. In the moment that we feel as though we arrive, we're probably a little farther than we than we think we are. So
Absolutely.
just embrace the journey, and that's why I'm so happy that you gave us some practical tips to move forward. Until next time, everyone, we'll see you in the Leadership Lounge. Bye.